Have you ever wondered why humanity has been locked in conflict since the dawn of civilization? Why every generation seems destined to face its own battles, whether on battlefields or within the hidden chambers of their own hearts? This is not a coincidence. This is not a failure of evolution. You are living in the middle of a war right now. Not the kind with bullets and bombs, though those exist too, but the invisible war that rages inside every human being who dares to become more than they were yesterday. And here's what most people don't realize. This war is not your enemy. It is your greatest teacher. Stop and think. How many times have you felt that knot in your throat when facing a difficult decision? How many times has fear whispered that you should stay small, stay safe, stay hidden? You know that feeling. The one that makes your chest tight and your hands shake when you're about to do something that matters. That's the sound of your inner battlefield. Carl Jung understood this better than most. He knew that inside every human psyche lives what he called the shadow, the collection of everything we've rejected, denied, and pushed into the darkness. But here's what really happens when you refuse to face this shadow. It doesn't disappear. It grows stronger. It finds other ways to express itself. It projects onto others, creating the very conflicts you think you're avoiding. The external wars we fight are simply manifestations of the internal wars we refuse to acknowledge. This is not weakness. This is the reality for every human being who has ever lived. You are not broken because you feel this conflict. You are human, and that humanity demands that you fight, not against others, but for the integration of everything you are. But let me tell you something that will change how you see every challenge in your life. Conflict is not destruction. Conflict is construction. Research shows that exposure to adversity creates profound psychological changes. When you face real challenges, when you're forced to confront the parts of yourself you'd rather ignore, something remarkable happens. Your brain literally rewrites itself. New neural pathways form. Old limitations crumble. This is what psychologists call post-traumatic growth. But I call it something simpler: becoming who you were always meant to be. The data tells a story that most people miss. Yes, conflict can create trauma. Yes, it can lead to depression and anxiety. But look closer at those same studies and you'll see something else. People who face serious adversity experience genuine post-traumatic growth. They don't just recover. They become stronger, wiser, more resilient than they ever were before. And that is precisely where the real truth lies. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate, Jung wrote. Think about that for a moment. Everything you've been avoiding, every fear, every weakness, every part of yourself that makes you uncomfortable, is quietly running your life from the shadows. The ancient warriors understood something we've forgotten. They didn't fight because they loved violence. They fought because they understood that the willingness to face conflict is what separates the living from the merely existing. Your shadow contains everything you need to become whole. Your anger, it's teaching you about boundaries. Your fear, it's showing you what matters most. Your pain, it's carving out space for deeper joy than you've ever known. But here's the truth that needs to be said. You cannot integrate what you will not acknowledge. You cannot heal what you refuse to feel. You cannot become who you're meant to be while running from the parts of yourself that feel too dangerous to face. The journey from conflict to growth follows a predictable pattern. It starts with disruption, that moment when your comfortable assumptions about life shatter like glass. Then comes the crisis point, where you feel like everything is falling apart. Most people stop here. They try to rebuild the old life, return to the old patterns, pretend the disruption never happened. That's where the point lies. The breaking point is not the end of your story, it's the beginning of your real story. The research on war veterans reveals something profound. Those who learn to process their experiences, who do the difficult work of integration rather than avoidance, often emerge with capabilities they never knew they had. Enhanced empathy, deeper relationships, a clarity about what truly matters that most people spend their entire lives seeking. This is not about glorifying trauma. This is about recognizing that your capacity for growth is directly proportional to your willingness to face difficulty. Here's what really happens when you stop running from conflict and start engaging with it consciously. You begin to develop what psychologists call stress inoculation. Each challenge you face and overcome builds your capacity to handle the next one. Each shadow you integrate reduces the power it has over you. The framework is simple but not easy. Acknowledge the conflict instead of denying it. Feel the emotions instead of numbing them. Learn from the experience instead of just surviving it. Integrate the lessons instead of compartmentalizing them. This is shadow work in action. This is how warriors are forged, not on battlefields, but in the quiet moments when you choose courage over comfort, truth over convenience, growth over safety. Your brain is designed for this. The same stress hormones that flood your system during conflict, the cortisol, the adrenaline, the cascade of neurochemical changes, are also the mechanisms of adaptation. Your nervous system is literally built to transform challenge into strength. But here's what most people don't understand. This system only works if you engage with it consciously. If you numb yourself, distract yourself, or avoid the conflict entirely, you miss the gift. You stay stuck in the old patterns, wondering why life feels so limited, so gray, so small. The neuroscience is clear. People who learn to regulate their stress response, who can stay present during difficulty rather than dissociating from it, develop enhanced emotional intelligence, better decision-making abilities, and increased resilience over time. This is why we have to fight, not to destroy, but to create, not to harm, but to heal, not to stay the same, but to become. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote, "What does not kill me makes me stronger." But he understood something deeper. Strength is not the absence of vulnerability. Strength is the willingness to be vulnerable in service of something greater than your own comfort. Every great philosopher, every spiritual teacher, every person who has contributed something meaningful to the world has understood this truth. The path to wisdom runs directly through the places you least want to go. Maybe you're tired of playing it safe. Maybe you're ready to stop pretending that avoiding conflict will somehow lead to peace. Maybe you're beginning to understand that the very thing you've been running from is the very thing that will set you free. The data on post-conflict societies shows us something remarkable. Communities that learn to process their collective trauma, that do the difficult work of reconciliation and integration, often emerge stronger and more united than they were before the conflict began. This is true for individuals as well. Here's what I want you to understand. You are not a victim of your circumstances. You are not powerless against your fears. You are not doomed to repeat the patterns that have kept you small. You are a warrior in training, and your battlefield is your own consciousness. The shadow work that Jung described, the post-traumatic growth that researchers document, the transformation that every wisdom tradition teaches. These are not abstract concepts. These are practical technologies for becoming fully human. But the truth needs to be said. No one else can do this work for you. No one else can face your shadows. No one else can integrate your conflicts. No one else can choose courage when fear is screaming at you to run. This is your fight. This is your gift. This is your responsibility. And when you finally understand that conflict is not happening to you but for you, when you realize that every challenge is an invitation to become more than you currently are, everything changes. The energy shifts. The fear transforms into excitement. The obstacles become opportunities. The war becomes a dance. This is how conflict shapes us. This is why we have to fight. This is how we become who we were always meant to be. Your transformation is waiting on the other side of your willingness to engage. The question is not whether you have the strength to face it. The question is whether you have the courage to begin. Have you ever wondered why conflict keeps invading your life even when you beg the world for peace? Are you curious why the very word war sends a chill down your spine yet secretly thrills your heart with possibility? Stop and think. How many times have you fought an inner battle before you even opened your eyes this morning? This is not weakness. This is the architecture of your psyche. And that is precisely where the danger and the opportunity lies. War is older than every story you tell yourself about progress. You see armies, flags, explosions. But let me tell you something. You also see mirrors. What you call an enemy is often a rejected fragment of you that refuses to stay silent. Jung whispers, "Everyone carries a shadow." Do you notice how quickly that shadow projects itself onto anyone who threatens your certainty? You condemn them. You justify yourself. Yet the clash continues. The external bullets merely trace the internal shrapnel. So you march to the front lines outside because you ignored the trenches inside. And suddenly everything changes. The energy shifts. Have you ever felt the knot in your throat when you try to speak an uncomfortable truth? That knot is a siege engine. Your silence fires its own missiles. Every suppressed fear becomes a sniper hiding in the dark. Carl Jung warned that unowned impulses return with demonic dynamism. Isn't that exactly what erupts when a polite debate turns into a friendship-ending war? You don't just clash over ideas. You clash over identity, over survival, over meaning. You bleed without visible wounds. And you wonder why your relationships look like scorched earth. That's where the point lies. The real smoke rises from your unconscious. Your body joins the conflict whether you grant permission or not. Adrenaline floods your veins. Cortisol sharpens your focus. Neuroplastic pathways rewire themselves to remember every flash and bang. The same chemicals that prime you to attack also sculpt your future resilience. Scientists call it post-traumatic growth. Nearly half of those who face serious adversity report profound positive change. Do you see the paradox? The wound becomes the forge. The scar turns to armor, but only if you stay conscious in the flames. Otherwise, the fire devours you. Maybe it's time to choose which story your neurons will code. Close your eyes. Can you hear the drum beats of ancient heroes? Joseph Campbell maps their journey. Departure, initiation, return. You follow the same arc every time life drags you into conflict. First, you refuse the call. Then crisis strikes. Then the warrior archetype storms forth, sword blazing in the psyche. But the truth needs to be said. Every archetype has a shadow. Heroism mutates into fanaticism if you cling to it too tightly. Warrior energy untempered by wisdom becomes rage. So the real quest is not victory over others. It is integration of power and compassion. Nietzsche's warning echoes, "What does not kill me makes me stronger." Stronger for what? Stronger to serve something beyond ego. Evolution writes its own war stories in your DNA. From competing genes to sibling rivalry, conflict shapes life itself. The species that master cooperation through conflict thrive, while the ones that suppress every disagreement stagnate. Do you notice how teams bond fastest under pressure? Soldiers describe comradeship in battle as intense as blood ties. Adversity forges kinship. But here's what really happens. Unresolved competition mutates into chronic sabotage. Hypermaladaptation, scientists call it, traits driven far from any group's actual goals. Translation: avoid necessary fights and you pay with collective dysfunction. So war, paradoxically, safeguards order. Yet blind war destroys it. The difference is that conscious conflict aims for synthesis, not annihilation. Look around your city. Politics, culture, workplace gossip. They all rehearse the same battle choreography. Stress inoculation trainers teach soldiers and executives to face graded challenges so the next hit doesn't break them. 3 phases: conceptualize, rehearse, apply. You can do the same with emotional skirmishes. Name the trigger, practice the response, then enter the arena. Most people won't. They surrender to overwhelm, and society slides toward brittle outrage. But let me tell you something. Your daily micro-wars decide whether that spiral accelerates or arrests. What happens when a fight violates your deepest values? Enter moral injury, not physical trauma, spiritual shrapnel. You feel contaminated by acts of commission or omission. The shame corrodes your sense of worth. The betrayal burns hotter than napalm. Traditional PTSD therapy only mutes the flashbacks. Moral repair demands confession, restitution, forgiveness. And that is precisely where the danger lies. You would rather numb than reconcile. But the truth needs to be said. Unhealed moral injury seeds the next war. You project the guilt. You hunt scapegoats. Conflict cycles on. Maybe you're tired of dodging sniper thoughts and mortar emotions. Maybe it's time to choose conscious combat. First, acknowledge the shadow. Second, harness stress inoculation. Small, deliberate challenges expand your capacity. Third, practice post-traumatic growth rituals. Gratitude journaling, meaning-making, service. Fourth, integrate moral repair. Admit harm, seek amends, rebuild trust. Finally, circle back to the opening hook. Every external war mirrors an internal campaign. You cannot abolish conflict, but you can alchemize it. Pain becomes purpose. Fear becomes fuel. Division births dialogue. This is not utopia. This is disciplined transcendence. And that is your invitation. Have you ever noticed how your biggest breakthroughs followed your hardest battles? Have you ever wondered why the universe keeps handing you the same lesson till you wield it with grace? Stop and think. How many gifts have you buried under avoidance? How many times has retreat cost you the very peace you crave? The difference is that today you know the pattern. Today you choose the warrior path of integration, not domination. Today you fight for wholeness. And when you do, war stops shaping you unconsciously. You shape war into wisdom. You become the forge, the flame, and the finished blade. Your transformation waits on the other side of conscious conflict, and you have the courage to begin.